Welcome to this week's Eternal Monday, where Blacephalon from Unbroken Bonds takes on Charizard EX from Obsidian Flames. Today's game comes from Eternal format at NAIC. I did not record any games myself at NAIC. Unfortunately, my equipment wasn't really suited to the job. That'll change next year. I have equipment now that can do it. But this game was kindly recorded by Gyroshan of the Metapod podcast. If you're not already watching the Metapod podcast, I would highly recommend you give it a listen and or watch. Speaking of podcasts, if you don't know already, I am part of a podcast myself. I am one of the two hosts of the Poke Beach podcast. Links for both the Metapod podcast and for the Poke Beach podcast will be in the description below. Definitely check those out. But this is Eternal Monday, not Podcast Monday, so let's look a little bit at an Eternal format game, shall we? If you're new here, you might be wondering what the heck even is the Eternal format. In short, it is the unlimited format with a ban list. So this means the format features cards from the original base set all the way through to the most recent tournament legal set. Although it's an unofficial format, it's an incredibly fun format with a lot of rich deck building and gameplay experience to be had. If you're interested in learning more about the Eternal format, you can do so at justinbasil.com/eternal. All right, as our players getting shuffled up, I'm just going to let everybody know these are their very first games with these decks, and both of these players borrowed decks to have a chance of participating in this tournament. So they're probably going to not make some optimal plays. Again, they have only played this. Well, they've never played either of these decks before, actually. These are brand new players to the format. We see a Pidgey start and a Baltoy start on each side. Looks like our Blacephalon player is going to go first, playing down an Artisan, searching the deck. I have to imagine they're probably going to go for a Blacephalon here. They don't have one down at the moment. They don't really have options for doing anything with regard to discard draw or other draw at this point since they're going first. So we do see that Blacephalon come down. Just want to make sure to get that out, get it ready for a potential welder in the future so that it's available as a target. We do see a retreat out of it and putting the Blacephalon in the active, trying to preserve the access to Claydol, but I don't know how much. I guess they realize they need to save the energy attachment for next turn so that they have the 3 energy on Blacephalon. We do see a Nest Ball off of the Pidgey side for the opponent here, and we immediately see a Miraidon tandem unit going to be able to get 2 lightning type Pokemon out of the deck and throw them on the bench for that player. In this case, they're going to both be Charmanders. You heard that right. That is those are indeed Charmander. They are both lightning type. Very similar to how Terra Pokemon work now. Back in the day, there were Delta species Pokemon, and you see the active Pidgey is also lightning type. So this deck is able to pull the Charmander and the Pidgeys out of the deck with that tandem unit and help itself set up. Claydol does come down. Excellent play there. Going to be able to grab some big draw there pretty quick. But Blacephalon is in the active spot. We do see Lapras coming down, so Sean here is going to be searching the deck for a welder, most likely if the fire energy is going to be available in hand. And there is a welder, yep. So support navigation for that welder. Going to find a card off of that quick ball there. Quick ball, finding that Blacephalon, getting another one in play. You don't want to be caught with your pants down when it comes down to having your Blacephalon ready and chained. You really, really need those out. We do see a Fire Crystal getting a couple of fire energy out of the discard pile, getting those back into play, getting a couple of fire energy attached off that welder on the bench to Blacephalon, which is very interesting. I don't know if there's a well, it can't be a Guzman hand this turn. Maybe a Prime Catcher. Gonna go after something here. Very interesting to attach off of welder to the bench and not just take an active knockout. Do you see another discard? Looks like that was a Fiery Flint. So going to go and get 4 fire energy out of the deck that way. So with Fiery Flint, you're discarding 2 cards and then searching your deck for up to 4 fire energy. So you see a manual attachment on that Blacephalon on the bench. So we just need to see some way for that Blacephalon to get the active spot. And it is indeed Prime Catcher. So Prime Catcher coming in the active spot. Going to take a knockout on the Pidgey. If the Blacephalon player doesn't have enough energy to take a KO on the Miraidon, I like this. Because, I mean, you're knocking out the Charmander. That's one less Charizard that can be out in play. Blacephalon does kind of struggle a little with taking bigger knockouts, so it's nice to go after smaller targets like Miraidon when you can. And I do like going after them with Prime Catcher. The biggest problem with Blacephalon in terms of supporter usage is you can't Guzma and Welder on the same turn. So you really need to be able to be quite wise with your use of Prime Catcher. And I'm hoping this one pays off for him. I do see Trainer's Mail for a Versus Seeker. Versus Seeker going to be pretty instrumental going forward to get those Blacephalon powered up. You'll be able to reuse Welder to keep these guys going strong. Fire Energy, just that single Fire Energy going to be enough to knock out that Charmander. Only 50 HP there. So exact math for the Fireball Circus attack. On the Charizard side, looks like I see a Mime in the hand. Mime not really that useful in this particular matchup, but we do see Evolution Incense too, and that gets us the Charizard EX, which with that rare candy is going to let it power up. Gonna let it search that deck for a couple of Fire Energy and throw them around. See a couple on the active and choosing not to attach a third. It's okay. I guess it figures not a useful target. All right, so there is a Wishful Baton on that active Blacephalon. Wishful Baton is very similar to the current Heavy Baton format, but you're not restricted to Pokemon that have a 4 retreat. So in this case, those energy will be thrown off and put onto the benched Blacephalon once that active Blacephalon is knocked out. On the Charizard side, we do have a Pidgeotto. Pidgeotto has Airmail, an ability very similar to the Dracloak that's currently in format, actually. Just barely came, this kind of effect just came back to the standard format. Very cool to see. And we're going to see a Marnie. So that wonderful Versus Seeker that was in the hand earlier is now gone, unfortunately. But we do see some more draw on the Zard side. And a Nestball, probably going to get out another Charmander, I have to imagine. Kind of set up, yeah, getting another Charizard in progress, if you will. Making sure that once this Charizard goes down, there's something else that can be attacked with. Charizard is a very Charizard heavy deck in terms of attackers. It doesn't have a whole lot of other options. The biggest non-Charizard EX attacker is still a baby Charizard from Team Up. So your options are kind of narrow, and you want to make sure you have a stream of Charmander ready to evolve up and be big and strong for your deck. Scorched Earth, a stadium card coming down. Also kind of nice. Didn't use it though, which is kind of weird because his opponent has Fire Energy too. So that's kind of unfortunate. And his opponent's looking at it like, oh, that seems good. I'm just going to take advantage. So discarding a Fire Energy to draw 2 cards off of his opponent's stadium, and then using Heat Factory to do a similar thing and discard, draw 3. So very fun. So they basically just got an easy and free draw 5, whereas the Charizard player didn't actually even make use of that. Didn't even make use of the stadium. So we have that Wishful Baton is unfortunately used up. At the point where we're playing here, this deck does run 3 of them. Later versions of the list have cut it down to 2, and it's probably a little greedy, but it is just 2. We do see another Fiery Flint pulling 4 more Fire Energy out of the deck. Sean here trying to see if he can one-shot this Charizard EX here. Gonna see what we got. Getting this Charizard EX down on this turn would be pretty big. If for nothing else, for the morale. Okay, so we are seeing a Welder, which makes you wonder how much Fire Energy Sean has in his hand at the moment. See a Level Ball, and looks like he's choosing to fail it. I know I talked with Sean during this match at one point, and I was like, "Oh yeah, once you get double Claydol, you're golden. You're cooking everything." It turned out he prized a second Claydol, so that a little unfortunate for Blacephalon. I know he also prized one of his Fire Crystal, so he's kind of running on fumes without realizing he's running on fumes, I think, or maybe he knows, and I just under appreciating him. I do wonder, was that a full 4 off of? I don't know. I hope that was a full 4 off of Superior Energy Retrieval. But that Charizard does still go down, so that's pretty good to see. Charizard going down, that's another 2 prize cards. Charizard now needs to be set up by the Charizard player, and the fact that it's difficult to do can be amusing. We do see Jacques. So Jacques is going to find 2 evolution Pokemon out of the deck. So it's basically double evolution incense. And put them into your hand. In this case, probably going to see a Pidgeotto and a Charizard if there's a rare candy in hand. I don't quite know what Charizard player has in his hand here. There's that kind of a desperate search motion there, where while Sean's just checking his discard pile. I think Sean at this point realizes that he needs to be a little careful with his resources with regard to retrieving and recovering fire energy, just because it's very easy to exhaust your resources. So there is the baby Charizard coming out to play here. Not sure that was entirely necessary. I think I would rather have seen a Pidgeotto for the active. Yeah. I would have preferred to see the Ditto turn into a Pidgeotto myself, but maybe the other one's prized. We do see the active evolve up into the Charizard, and Pidgeot just evolving from that Pidgeotto. So I really, really would have liked to have seen Pidgeotto there. We do see Nightly Garbage Run. Nightly Garbage Run is basically Super Rod for those who are unfamiliar. They're going to shuffle back in a Charmander, the Charizard EX, and a Fire Energy by the look of it here. Not too bad. Roaring Resolve can absolutely knock out this Blacephalon. Just going to search the deck for 2 Fire Energy, attach them to that Charizard. That'll find 100 damage plus the 30 base, 130. Blacephalon going to get knocked out by that. Sean does have that second Blacephalon almost entirely ready to go on the bench, though. So it's not the end of the world with the setup he currently has, which is good. Not ideal to lose that energy in play, but it is what it is. Sean here has Floatstone in hand, putting the Clay Doll up wisely. Kind of making a choice about what to do here. Realizing the knockout is going to be costly in terms of energy discard to take out that Charizard. Sean does still need 3 prize cards. Got that 3rd energy now on the Blacephalon. Just needs to find some energy to take a KO on the active Charizard. That Charizard should have damage on it from the Roaring Resolve. There aren't damage counters on there, but the Roaring Resolve does do damage to that Charizard. But unfortunately, the damage by Roaring Resolve is not, if I'm not mistaken, going to be enough to matter for the math for Blacephalon. So unfortunately, not going to be a way to reduce the energy needed here. Trainer's Mail digging at the top of the deck, trying to find a crystal or a retrieval or something. Did find a superior energy retrieval, which is nice. Gonna help him knock out that baby Charizard in the active. At this point, this is where I really wish we had that Prime Catcher to go after that Miraidon, or to go out even after the Pidgeot, just because they're easier to KO than the big Charizard. And knocking out the baby Charizard in the active is fine, because you do need to go back down to even prizing. But yeah, it's having that big Charizard in the active is a big feels bad, especially when this Blacephalon is going to get knocked out by that Charizard. And you're now forced to use Welder to try to get the benched one up and running. Charizard player trying to do something, figure out what they're working with here. Looks like a quick search, finding a card of use. Going for a research, kind of an interesting situation here. I'm not sure how necessary that was, frankly. I'm not sure what it is they're digging for, frankly. They have a Charizard set up. Maybe they're going to go for another Charmander, or trying to find a Charmeleon to evolve up on that Ditto. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. You can, for the record, you cannot rare candy Ditto into a Charizard or into a Pidgeot. It has to manually evolve up, because its Almighty Evolution ability does state that you can't just go straight to stage. So you evolve up into a stage 1. So doing a little bit of reading here, realizing that Pidgeot is a stage 2, not a basic. So I'm gonna throw that back into the hand. Kind of an unfortunate instance there. Trainer's Mail, looking at the top 4 cards of the deck. Seeing Guzma, looking at that Guzma thing it's pretty tasty. Not available this turn because of research, but also not really needed this turn. You're going to knock out the active Blacephalon. Although there is I think I missed that earlier. The Wishful Baton is on that Blacephalon. So that is going to help out, actually. Claydol, with that tool, the Floatstone, going to allow for free retreat. So that Blacephalon's now powered up. Now all Sean needs to do is find a way to either gust around this Charizard with Guzma, which the Versus Seeker could let him do. I'm not sure if the Guzma's in the discard pile or not. If it is in the discard pile, that could be really big. He just needs a way to get the energy. So there is Guzma. That's very good. Guzma could get the game here. So Guzma, Miraidon coming up. Now we just have to hope and pray that there's enough energy available to take the knockout here. Gonna need 5 energy to knock out Miraidon with Fireball Circus. But does Sean have any fire energy in hand? Going with a luxury ball, looking at his deck, going, oh yeah, you see him pointing at the prize cards. I think he realizes at this point that Fire Crystal is prized. Missed it during the deck searches. I remember he's like, how many does this deck play? After the match, of course, telling him, oh yeah, it plays 4. Do you see a Fire Crystal? You get 3 of the energy, but you still need 2 more to take the knockout. Art is on discarding rather the Heat Factory, going to the Lost Zone because it is a Prism Star Stadium. Going to take the option for drawing away from the opponent there, so they can hopefully not have the necessary resources to retreat the Miraidon out of the active spot before Sean can find the necessary energy to take a big KO here. So Sean's on 150 damage to that active Miraidon, but need 100 more damage to, well, not 100 more, 2 more energy for Fireball Circus to take the KO, right? And looks like our Charizard player has Guzma in hand and gonna go after that Claydol, which is really, really rough. Gonna make it even harder for Sean to find those energy. And now, without the real option to gust up that Miraidon again, this looks, unfortunately, like the Blacephalon has kind of just running on fumes now at this point. Running out of energy here. The Blazer tried to do damage to the active Charizard. You see that Fire Crystal in the prizes. And at this point, it's a scoop. Unfortunately, Blacephalon running out of gas at the end of the game there. But all the same, pretty good game. Very good first game for both of these players for the Eternal format. Again, these were the first times for both of them playing these decks. Very new to the format, very new to these decks. One of the things that I know tripped Sean up in that first game is Sean didn't realize, and this is very common for a lot of new players in the Eternal format, is Green's Exploration lets you search for 2 trainer cards when you have no Pokemon in play with abilities. So the fun thing about Blacephalon is a deck doesn't run any Pokemon with abilities. So even though you're only running that 1 Green's Exploration, you do have access through Versus Seeker to other cards in your deck pretty much throughout the game. So if you're not having to rely on a welder to get the energy attached to your Pokemon, you can Green's Exploration for a Fire Crystal or for a Fiery Flint or for a Superior Energy Retrieval and get those energies back that way. But what Sean didn't realize is that Poke Powers and Poke Bodies, they're not abilities. So with Claydol in play, Sean was thinking that he couldn't use Green's Exploration and get those resources. Of course, we know now that's not the case. You can, because they're not abilities. Anyway, let's look at these decks. Up first for our deck lists, we're going to give a quick look to Charizard with Pidgeot. Overall, this deck list is not, if I'm not mistaken, any different from the list that was featured on the first drafts series for Charizard. Honestly, the list works quite well as it is. The Cynthia's Feelings is something I really like. That card works really well in the list. You get that shuffle draw 4 or shuffle draw 8, depending on your situation. With regard to your Pokemon being knocked out, you have the quick search option on the Pidgeot, so you have choices. Scramble Switch is crazy powerful with that baby Charizard. It can really cause some major headaches for your opponent with that single prizer Charizard. All in all, like you saw in the video, it does play very similarly to the version of the deck that plays in standard currently. It just has some cool tools with the Charmander and the Pidgey both being lightning type, so it can take advantage of Miraidon to help itself set up. And then next we're going to look at Blacephalon. This is a list as it was played in the video. I will say there definitely were changes necessary. This was not Sean's list. He borrowed the deck, so he kind of got stuck with the deck building choices that I had made. And this was frankly more or less the same general idea I had when I made the first drafts list. All I did really was switch over the Ninetales engine to Claydol. This game came from the first of the 2 in real life Eternal formats at NAIC. It was the first time Sean got a chance to kind of try out the format and get a feel for this deck. We made a 1-card swap on day 2 where he actually came in second, believe it or not. Pretty awesome for your second tournament in Eternal. Came in second. We ended up swapping out the Pokemon Collector for an Ino, if I'm not mistaken. A little bit of extra draw really did help though. And then that disruption against your opponent, of course, is also really good too, especially late game when you're really needing that way to slow them down so you can get some time to pool some energy. But I would actually suggest further changes. So I'm going to flip over to the newer version of the list that we've made some tweaks to. We cut a Wishful Baton for a Super Rod, or in this particular deck list, actually it's a Nightly Garbage Run. Same effect if you want to play a Super Rod, Nightly Garbage Run, Night Maintenance, it doesn't really matter. It's all the same effect. We do have a Victini Prism Star in here now. That was actually in the standard versions of the list back when the deck was a deck in standard. It did play Victini Prism Star. I actually think it's really good in here. It's another way to get energy back into the deck if you need it later. It's also just a really good attacker in general. It does some decent damage for not a whole lot of investment. You can just get those 2 attachments off of a welder or a single attachment, draw into another energy attached that way. It's good. But again, we still have that Nightly Garbage Run just in case we need to be able to burn a Fiery Flint. Another noteworthy change, we've actually switched the ball toy that we're playing. So we were playing the Psychic type Ancient Origins ball toy that gave us some protection from effects, but what we really want in this case is a little bit more HP so that we're a bit more resilient against Dragapult. But being fighting type actually has its advantage here too, because it means we can get our ball toys out if our opponent has a Brooklet Hill in play. So Brooklet Hill ends up becoming an out for us. Some decks, especially the Water Box decks, Palkia, they don't play Artisan. They might instead play Brooklet Hill. And if they're playing Brooklet Hill, this means that their Brooklet Hill isn't out to our ball toy. Our deck list is already fairly tight in terms of outs to our Pokemon, and we really want to save those where possible for our Blacephalon and our Victini, and if absolutely urgent, our Lapras. So if we can spare some of those searches for other Pokemon and just abuse our opponent's search stadiums, then it's absolutely worth doing. And then the last change here, you'll note the Zinnia's Resolve is no longer on the list. It was actually the card that was cut for the Victini Prism Star. Frankly, the Victini Prism Star is just better. Zinnia's Resolve is unfortunately not that great of draw in the Eternal format, and while the idea behind just kind of adding cards to your hand seems decent in theory in the deck, where you're just kind of pooling cards in your hand and trying to collect as many fire energy as you can manage, the ultimate fact is that Zinnia's Resolve is just either mostly dead or actually dead throughout a good chunk of the game against a lot of opponents, and so it just ends up not being a very good option for draw in the Eternal format. So it got cut and Victini got put in there, but those are the tweaks that we've made thus far with Blacephalon since NAIC. Anyway, that is all for today. That is it for Blacephalon versus Charizard EX in the Eternal format at NAIC. Thank you again to Gyroshan for recording this video. Thank you to his opponent for participating and allowing the recording to happen so that we could have this video here on the channel. With that said, thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video.